We are now going over each of the chapters very briefly, and I will try to tell you what you can expect from each chapter in a nutshell. So if you're still not sure if this is the right course for you, I think that this is the right place to see if there are more than one chapter that might resonate with you, that might be one of the things that you're looking for, then it might be a good idea to take the course. If you know all of those things, then yeah, there might still be some interesting examples, but maybe you already know a lot then, and that's not the right course for you. So let's just quickly start. Now, chapter 1 is the chapter we're currently in, so those is just sort of housekeeping and organization and some overviews. So let's skip that and let's just go to chapter 2 or section 2, which I called From Theory to Practice. And in that chapter, we are going to sort of look at the general idea how UI Toolkit is set up. And this is sort of described in the documentation, so you can also look this up. And we will try to answer the questions: why are you actually using things like UXML files, USS files? What are they good at? Why is it a good idea to work with your UI in that way? Now, one of the terms here are visual trees that we will have a look at. We will then talk about why separating styling and layout structure is a good idea, which is exactly what UI Toolkit is doing and what was not so simple and nice in the other UI systems that Unity offered. And one important thing where you can spend a lot of time on are USS selectors, and we'll also look at them. Then we are going to move on to a section that is probably the most standalone section, kind of a little bit isolated section, because it's just regarding layout and Flexbox, and this is basically telling you or teaching you how can I sort of build my UI layouts in UI Builder. And now this is kind of independent on lots of the other things that we will do in code later. And if you are, I don't know, if you're working at a game company and it's not your job at all to actually do the initial layout, then this might not be super interesting for you and you might not need this. However, I think even in that situation, it's always a good thing to have the ability to do some rapid prototyping, to be able to quickly do some mock-up of what you want to achieve. And that is one of the big advantages with UI Toolkit, that you can do this very quickly and very simply, with the one little caveat that you need to understand Flexbox, because otherwise it's a pain, because you will have some weird properties that you don't even know the names of and that you don't know what they're doing. You will do trial and error. And with Flexbox, you need some trial and error, but with some basic knowledge, because if you do it without any knowledge, you can get lost for hours in setting some weird properties that you don't know why and what consequences they are having. And like the first time I touched this, I also went through that experience, and I think that a lot of people go over that experience, because it's not as simple as you might know from some other GUI apps where you just say, I don't know, take something and align it left, take something else, align it right, or stuff like that. It has a lot of advantages, but it has in the beginning a little bit of a learning curve, and I think that it's beneficial to actually know how to use it, and that's why I put this distinct section in here, because otherwise you're not having the whole picture. You are just having the coding picture, and then the course is only useful if you are sort of not the designer and you don't want to actually prototype your UIs. But if you want to prototype your UIs, this section will tell you a lot about it. We will learn all the important Flexbox terminology and understand why it's there and what things it's solving, what generally the idea of Flexbox is, why it's there, and what it's trying to sort of the workflow that's sort of suggesting that you use, in which direction it's pushing you. That was sort of important for me to bring this over here. And obviously, this only makes sense if you show a lot of examples, and that's what we are going to look at. Now, from section 4 on, you might sort of say that the main part of the project starts. Now, sorry, the main part of the course starts. Again, section 3 layout is absolutely important if you really want to have the whole picture, but it's sort of a little bit isolated from what starts in section 4. From section 4 on, basically, we will, with a increasing complexity, try to go over the whole rest of the package and sort of all the tools that you might then need for a bigger UI project. And that's why in section 4 is not a real section. It's rather just a section for introducing the rest of the course, where we will set up the course project that will be there in almost all the chapters, I think, except 2. And we will try to add one little piece that the sections were about to this project. And in section 4, we will just make some initial UI without any functionality to have like some skeleton version for the project, such that later we don't have to recreate it every time. We just have something to work with. Now, this is optional, this initialization of the project. If you're not interested in seeing this actually being done live, it takes, I don't know, 20 minutes or something like that. So you can just skip this and just use the version from the resources and you will be good to go. And finally, with section 5, this will start sort of the deeper dive into the UI toolkit components, and we will basically start in the beginning with adding our first real controls to the canvas, things like a button, a slider, a drop down, a whatever. We will look at some of them in a bit more detail, but sort of from a starting perspective, just to see what can we see about them in the inspector, what properties do they provide, how are they connected with visual elements, things like that. We will then see some controls that are a little bit more complex. We'll see how the very simple ones kind of are different from a little bit more complex controls, and we will see, particularly for those complex controls, what you have to do, what it needs to be able to style them and to change their appearance and to sort of massage them to have the look that you actually want to give them. This will be, however, pretty basic still, so even if some of those controls have some more complex behavior, we will not go too deep on that. This will be like just start slowly and then have a first encounter with all of those things. Then in section 6, we will move to templates, which is sort of one step ahead. And those allow you to basically reuse parts of your components, or be able to change, I don't know, several things at once if you just instantiate them from a template, and then you can change the template, and all of those things that are coming from this template will be adjusted. There are, if you know prefabs in Unity, this the behavior of templates is pretty simple, and that's sort of the right mental label that you should put on them. We will then see how you can create and load them in scripts, because finally that will probably be the more for bigger things, yeah, I don't want to say that it's the more usual use case, but at least for my projects, I needed this probably more often from script than not. And while we're at it, because loading other resources is pretty simple as loading templates, because templates are basically just an asset in your project, we'll also see how you can load other resources in scripts and add images or style sheets dynamically to your objects. Now, section 7 is going to start and dive a little bit deeper into scripting and in how you can actually, now, in order to actually manipulate your elements and in order to change them, give them functionality, do whatever you want with them, you first have to get some references to them and find them. And that's actually sometimes not so super simple, because if you have, I don't know, more complicated layouts, you might have hundreds of visual elements on your canvas. And you want to maybe find the third button in the fifth column of the sixth row or whatever, or you want to find every second button in some column and stuff like that. And this is what uQuery helps us to solve, to be able to efficiently find references to our elements that we then can manipulate. It also gives us some basic tools to actually do something with those elements, like some simple for each syntax, where you can, in the same line basically where you are finding your elements, you can do something with them if you want to. But there is a lot of different syntax. If you look at it at first glance, it seems like there are 3 different ways how we can do the same thing. And that might be a little bit confusing in the beginning. So we will go over why there are 3 things, how they are actually different, and when to use which one of them actually. So that's a sort of important starting point to be able to do the stuff that will follow.